Always the case that I'm in trouble before I get started. But it turns out there's actually good reason. So when Senior Housing Forum was just this tiny little blog, and there were a few people who were reading it, I finally decided I was going to see if I could find a few sponsors. And so I was at Leading Age, and I was wandering around the trade show, and I found somebody who was kind of interested in being a sponsor for the site, and I was in this intense conversation, and he sounded really, really interesting. And so we're having this conversation, and I'm standing there, and we're going back and forth, and all of a sudden, I feel somebody slug me on my left arm so hard, I almost fall to the ground. And I turn around, and there's this blonde, good-looking woman, tall. And about that time, she got really embarrassed because she realized I wasn't who she thought I was. And I don't think we exchanged names or cards. She apologized, she was embarrassed. And I was really intent on trying to close the deal. And so things went off, and except for having to have first aid on my arm and get a sling, it was all good. And then the next night, I was out at dinner with some friends, and I was sitting at this table, and all of a sudden I looked over, and actually my chair bumped into somebody, and I turned, and there she was again. So we decided we better become acquainted, and over the last, 4 years or 3.5 years, we've become good friends. I want to tell you a little bit about Denise, and then she'll probably embarrass me, but that's really why I forgot your name, didn't put your name on here. It was a revenge. Well, maybe it's because I forgot. But Denise runs an organization called Drive, where she works with senior living companies to develop better cultures that serve both employees and residents and families better. And highly respected in the industry. We do a lot of work together, a lot of talking together, and like I say, we become great friends. So do you want to do an introduction before I actually get started? Or do you want me to do that? You want to do that when it's your turn?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that I'm going to be in trouble. So what's normal? Is this normal? Majority IL, according to Nick, is at 90.9%. Majority assisted living is 87.2%. You guys, is that normal? What do you think? Comments, thoughts? I think that what happens is we get to the situation where we make some assumptions that we shouldn't make. So, do anybody know who this guy is? That's right. And what's he famous for? That's right. So, Rick Barry made granny shots famous. And what he demonstrated is that when you shoot free throws, granny style, you make more baskets. And for really good free throw shooters, it's not a huge percentage better, but we've got some really great players in the NBA who get free throw percentages that are under 50%. And yet they won't do it for two reasons. The first is because everybody assumes that this is the best way because everybody does it that way. And the other one is that it looks really girly and silly to shoot baskets this way. Huh? What's that? What? Yeah, I knew. That was just for you. So I would like to propose that we need to look at these things a little bit like the way Rick Barry, and there's actually somebody, I'm not really a big basketball fan, but I'm really fascinated. Malcolm Gladwell did a podcast, which is where I first learned about this. And it's really fascinating to see how, and wonder how many times we make assumptions about what normal is or normal should be when we just have got it wrong. Push the right button. So When I talk to senior living providers, everybody is really, really proud if they're beating the average. But the average is really the best of the worst and the worst of the best. And I don't know, would you like to be described that way as an individual? I don't think I would. I would not be so great. And I don't think that should be considered good enough, or being just a little bit above that. That shouldn't be good enough. So as we talk today, we've got 4 assumptions that we're operating under. And the first one is that 100% occupancy is achievable by every single senior living organization, or close to 100%. And I'm willing to acknowledge that there are actually a few buildings that maybe got built in a market that's so impacted that it would be impossible to do. But mostly, even in impacted markets, most senior living communities are so similar and so the same that if you start looking at it and thinking about it differently, you can beat that market. And I know organizations that are running consistently at 96, 97, 98, 99% occupancy in markets that are at 90%. So it can be done. The second thing is, and this is what Denise is going to talk about, is that operations have to be 100% consumer service oriented in order to make that happen. You can have the best marketing department in the world, but if your operations are struggling, have room to grow and a lot of room to grow, it's going to be very, very difficult, if not impossible, for them to make that 100%. The third thing is that sales has to be 100% customer service oriented. Next week, I'm actually doing a keynote for a sales organization in senior living. So I've spent a lot of time digging into the stats and the metrics and what more works. And we're not going to have time to go do that full keynote, but we're going to talk about some of those things. And then the last thing that I want to tell you is that there are enough prospects to go around to achieve that 100% occupancy today. Mostly, we do a poor job of telling our story. We have people who come in and make inquiries, and we either just don't call them back or respond to them, or we don't give them the story that makes them feel like that could be the best last chapter of my life. So, 100% achievable. Oh yeah? Oh yeah! So you might be thinking I've been like Pollyanna dropping acid, right? And that I'm seeing unicorns and rainbows, but this is true. So we're going to try a little game to start with. I need one person from each table to go over and grab one bucket there of beads. Every table needs just one bucket. I guess we didn't get string. I forgot to bring, so we don't need the string really. It was going to be a little bit fun. So grab one bucket. They don't all have the same amount in them, so you need to maybe think a little bit about whether you want a full one, an empty one, or someplace in between. Sort of tell me, I figure the people who are going to get either a really full one or a really empty one are the risk takers. So every table's got one now? Is that table back? Do you guys have one? Oh, okay, great. Perfect. And you guys have got one. And you guys are hiding in the back and you don't have one. Oh, no, you do have one. Good. Perfect. Okay, so here's how this little game works. There are a whole bunch of different colored beads in there. The only ones that you actually care about are the ones with the stars on there, because they represent hot prospects who are going to buy from somebody. And then there are all these other beads in there that have letters on them, and they represent people who are kicking the tires and might become good prospects. So your job now is to separate all the beads. The rest of, except for the I don't care about the rest of them. The rest of them are like those Medi-Cal people who are not part of it, but you need to separate all those out. And whoever gets done first, let me know, raise your hand, shout out, say margarita or something. So who's still working on it? So I'll bet you anything that the people who are still working had the fullest bucket. Right? They're still working, they had the fullest bucket, even if they had more people. And the point of this exercise is what? Think of these beads as prospects. Sometimes when you have a full bucket full of prospects, you've got so much stuff you've got to go through. And then your pile here of prospects is a lot bigger than their pile of prospects. Now, the good thing is nobody picked this bucket that had hardly any beads in it, and that might actually not have enough. They're still working on theirs. They've got a pretty good sized pile over there. Did you finish? Oh, you did finish yours. So the point of this whole thing is that you actually have the ability, if you work on these right, to take fewer leads, work them differently. I was talking to some folks at Argentum a few months ago, and their buildings are all running between 93% and 96% occupancy. So I asked them what the difference was. And they said, the building that gets 96 is at 96% occupancy, they get about 30 leads a month. And the building that's at 93, they get about 60. And they just don't have enough time to work those leads. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that works. But before we do that, Denise, you're up to talk a little bit about customer service on the operations side of things. The big one.
But I don't as tall as I am, I don't play basketball. This way or that way. So August 2015, I find myself in Denver Airport on this huge line for United customer service. I'm so upset, I'm trembling, and I've started to cry. I was planning a trip with my family for 7 months to go cross country. I was coming from which way's west? I was coming from the west, from a conference. They were coming from the east, from New Jersey, and we were gonna meet to first hike the Badlands in South Dakota. Anyone ever been to the Badlands? Yeah, so that was our destination, 5 a.m. to hike the Badlands. But because of a delayed connecting flight, I found myself on this horrible line. And I finally arrived to the front, saw the woman standing behind the counter in her crisp little navy suit and her perfect little tied scarf. And I said, I'm trying to get anywhere close to Rapid City, South Dakota. I don't know where that is. What's the closest airport? And I said, I'm not very good with geography. I don't even know where South Dakota is. Can you check a map? We don't have any maps. How about in the back seat of the plane? Could you look in the back of that magazine? They have maps in there. We don't have those maps over here. And now my New York is starting to come out. I said, what about the Google? Could you check the Google? And she said, we don't have internet access, with a smile. And so I found myself spending the night in Denver on my own dime, missing out on the beginning of my family trip. I eventually made it there. I thought long and hard when I was standing in that line crying, thinking about how I wanted to be with my family for this vacation we had planned so long, how this woman in front of me really could care less. No intent in helping me, no desire to say, I'm sorry about your situation. All she wanted to do is quite happily tell me she had no access to any maps. So I want you to think, and maybe you're already thinking, about an awful customer service experience that you have experienced yourself. Maybe it was a restaurant, maybe it was the doctor's office, maybe it was a store, maybe it was an airline, maybe it was when you were coming here. So for just a moment, we're just gonna take a couple minutes to do this, choose 2, 3 people, tell someone about an awful customer service experience that you yourself have experienced. All right? With a partner or 2 partners, 2 or 3 of you. Okay, just a couple minutes. What's an awful customer service experience that you have had? This is the kind of stuff you can talk forever about, right? Everybody wants to share their horrible, miserable stories, right? It feels really good to share them. So we have plenty of time over cocktails later on to share the rest of these, for those of you who didn't get to share. So what do all these stories have in common? Bad customer service. What else? No retention, right? Not keeping the people that we're serving badly. What else? They don't care about the individual. There was no caring there, right? I'm going on my break. There was definitely no caring there. Good luck to you, buddy. It's midnight. We're going home, right? And for you to say, I've been here 5 years, and we're going to charge your girlfriend anyway, right? So the common thread is we have people that don't care about people in every one of these situations. And guess what? We have it in every one of our organizations as well. So I'm a firm believer that we have people that don't care for 2 reasons: nature and nurture. One, we just have miserable people in life, right? There's just some people that go through life and they're just miserable. You can probably think of a couple in your head, maybe in your own family right now. I know I can. And then we have the people that we nurture to be that way, that we create, not because we want to, because we have policies and leadership styles and so forth that nurture people to be like this. And so I'm going to talk to you about both of those things, and then what can you do about it? So first, I want to give you just a little bit of a background and kind of framework about employee engagement in general. And employee engagement isn't just about being happy at work. Employee engagement means I want to go to work, I want to do the best job I can, not only for me, but also for my organization, right? I care about myself doing better, and I care about my organization doing better. That's different than I'm just showing up at work and I'm happy. So let's talk about the 3 different levels of engagement. First, actively disengaged. What percentage of people do you think are actively disengaged in organizations? On average, this is using Gallup's millions of employees that they survey in all different kind of fields. Average percentage of employees are disengaged in companies and organizations. 55, 50, 60, 35, 70. So 17% of people are actively disengaged. Okay, 17% of people. Thank God it's not 50 and 60. It feels like it after all our stories, though, doesn't it? We have the 50% that some of you yelled out are those people that are somewhat engaged. So the 17 actively engaged, these are people really working against you. I mean, really working against you. They are trying to destroy what you build up. These people in the middle are kind of hanging out and doing what they need to do, not a heck lot more. They're not really helping you either. And then finally, we have 33% of people, thank goodness, that are actively engaged in their work. These are the people, once again, that want to do better for you. They want to see your organization grow. They want to see your organization have a great reputation. So let me tell you a little bit about sort of the characteristics of some of these people. I call that first group the Debbie Downers. Remember Debbie Downer? You remember what she used to say? The sound, I should say? Yeah, that wah, 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 right? Somebody would say something really happy and be excited, and Debbie Downer would come in with her wah, 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 wah statement to follow it up, right? She was always dragging people down. So remember, that's 17% of the people in your organization that are the Debbie Downers. So my company does focus groups. I've spoken to tens of thousands of employees and residents and so forth. And in the focus groups, we often get quotes. They're always anonymous, but we get quotes. And so here's a quote from a typical Debbie Downer kind of person. This person said, "No one tells me anything about our marketing plans." Right? Debbie Downers love to say, "No one tells me anything." And so I asked this person, "Well, did you ask about your marketing plans?" And what do you think the answer was? No. And that, my friends, was the VP of marketing. Is that a little scary, right? No one tells me anything about the marketing plans. Did you ask? No. Right? She's no longer in that job. Probably not a big surprise. Next, I call these people the Homer Simpsons. 50%, right? Coming in, doing what they needed to do, maybe not lighting the world on fire, not destroying the place, somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe they're coming in, drinking some beer and donuts. What's that? Yeah, you and everybody else, my friend. Everybody always has got somebody in their head they're thinking of as we go through these. So the Homer Simpsons of the world. Here's a typical quote about a Homer Simpson. This is from a resident focus group that we did. "The aides are mostly nice, but there are a couple that don't want to be bothered. It's to get them that's the problem." Is that the reputation you want for your organization, for people to say, people don't want to be bothered over there? Right? This is not the message we want out in the world. And next we have the Target ladies. The Target ladies is another Saturday Night Live reference. That's the one where you go in and she's like, welcome to Target, I love Target. And she's running off to get all the items because she loves the items that people are buying as they go past her register. And that's about 33%. And here's a great quote from somebody we would consider a Target lady, and this is a maintenance assistant that said, my goal is to keep getting smiles from residents and to hear my name called when they need something. If I'm doing that, I'm doing my job. Not, oh my goodness, these people are always bothering me. This is a guy that's excited for people to be calling his name because then he knows he's doing his job and he's being of service. Think about those numbers. That means that 1 out of 3 people in the organization are actively engaged in their work. 1 of 3 people in your organization is actively engaged in their work. 1 of 3 people probably sitting around you. So look to your left and look to your right. You can figure out who is that, right? Who's the one that's actively engaged in their work? Because statistically, it's just one of you. I often say, we can figure that out too over cocktails. I often say, when you go back and you're walking down the hallway, the next 3 people that you walk by when you're back at work, 1 of them is going to be actively engaged in their work. So what can we do about this? And that's what we're going to talk about. So I told you nature, nurture, right? Nature. Some people are just born to be wah, 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 Debbie Downers. They're just born that way. I'll tell you a story about, this is true, I used to be a nursing home administrator and assisted living director. And when I was an administrator, I had a nurse who I did not even have to see her face. I knew she was working that day because I could just feel her presence when I walked through the area where she worked in. True story. I could see the looks on the faces of the people that she worked with, and you could feel the energy in that area, and I would know that she was working. And I'm a pretty friendly person, and it would take everything in me to just say good morning to her. But I would say, she's a good nurse. She's just not good with people. So, did you ever give yourself one of these excuses about someone, right? She's a good nurse, she's just not good with people. Now, when I think back upon that, I think about the fact that, yeah, being good with people, that's a pretty big chunk of the job of being a good nurse, isn't it? This is not like a little thing. This is a big part of the job. So I let that situation go on way longer than I should have, because she was not a person that we were going to change, right? She was a person that was that nature part, right? She was just a miserable human being. And when she was gone, what a difference it made. So the bottom line is, yay, we can do it. We can actually make a difference even with the people that are brought to us or that are coming to apply to us that were born, sort of this nature, born miserable people. How? One of the things we can do is look for the rock stars in your organization. So we worked with a company down in Tennessee, and they said, we've got some great employees, and we want more people just like them. Anybody have people that you would love to clone in your organization? You have some people you would love to clone in your organization, and they have some other people that probably you need to help out the door a little bit too. But you have people that you want to clone. And so that's what we did. We spoke to them and we said, tell us about these great people. Tell us about your absolute rock stars, your wonderful people. We want to hear all about them. And they described them. Oh man, they love to learn. If you go to do something for them, they say, don't do it for me. I want to know how to do it so I can do it in the future. And they're always trying to further their education on their own. They're trying to grow all the time. And man, are they creative. They're always thinking of new ideas. They're making suggestions. Even if something's going well, it's not good enough. It's never stuck with the status quo. They want to keep pushing forward and changing. And so I went back that night to the hotel, and I was thinking, looking at this list of ways that describe these people, and then looking at the list of values. And this was a company that is very, very committed to their values. 2 of their values were innovation and self-improvement. innovation, going right along with those people that were creative, right? Challenging the status quo and so forth. And self-improvement, people that were lifelong learners that they described and so forth. So it turns out they're rock stars, and these are only 2 examples, but whatever 6 or 7 values that they had, that their rock star attributes lined up exactly with their values that they had. Now we read about that stuff in leadership, right? But it was pretty eye-opening for me to see it actually in real life happening. That, wow, if you have people that actually live the values of the organization, they perform well and the organization performs better. So we help them craft, these are just 2 examples, and you could do this anyway in your own organization, but we looked and said, okay, how are you interviewing people then to find out that we're not hiring people that are stuck and never want to change, that we're not hiring people that aren't interested in self-improvement. And so we help them craft a list of questions. Those are just a couple of examples of those. So some other antidotes to nature, right, of fighting the people that are just sort of born miserable. You can involve residents and team members in hiring. Anyone doing that now? A group? Yeah, I see some hands. Yeah, I know Terry's doing. So that's a great way to help find people, once again, that fit with the culture of your organization, having team members and residents involved in the hiring, not just leaders and supervisors. Providing a strong orientation, onboarding, and staff development program. We constantly hear about this in our focus groups. It's one of the most often cited things that we hear from team members. We get thrown to the wolves, like it's day 1 on the job, we're short, and we get thrown in. And so what happens, that person just winds up leaving. And I have to imagine the person getting the service and support from that employee for that time, that can't be the greatest customer service experience in the world if they don't know what they're doing. And then asking residents for feedback about orientation and onboarding after they go through that process. Because who better than to tell you, yes, that person's going to be perfect here, or no, you know what, they're not really going to be a fit, or they need more training, or they need more education, than the resident themselves who are getting that care and those services. So I want you to think for a moment, what's your organization's antidote to nature? What are some of the things that you're doing to help bring in the right people and to help them get off on the right track? What are some of the things that you are doing? I gave you some examples, some questions around values, residents and team members involved in hiring. What are some of the programs that you have going on in your organization that is helping to fight you bringing in Debbie Downers into the organization? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to talk at your table about that question. Your organization's antidote to nature. All right, so let's hear some of these antidotes that you shared with each other. And these are particularly important because there'll be tons of ideas that you can take back to your own organization and implement it and adapt it to your place. So anyone want to share? First off, share some of the things that you're doing to help fight the Debbie Downers.
Better orientation, more orientation.
So more orientation. What's more orientation look like?
Well, a lot of times it can be just a matter of hours or a half a day, but we're really trying to turn it into more like a week-long type of.
Week-long, right? That's great. So not just welcome and here's the keys and good luck to you?
Right.
Awesome. I saw a hand back here.
Yeah, so we started with a hiring software that does a pre-assessment of hiring, skills, and attitude.
Ah,
It rates behavior-based questions that interviewers can ask. And then we do group hiring where we have Peter, as well as leadership and a resident part of the hiring process. And then we have a specific position-based onboarding process that we go through. And then on our mentorship program, we have a newer employee as part of that, because the newer employee can say, hey, this is how you can get through the system here, as well as the older employees who have the ropes. They can sometimes screw people up if they know how to get around the ropes.
yes.
So we do kind of a duo
I like that.
of onboarding.
Okay, good. What else? Other thoughts?
We try and get team members outside of the office with other members of the team as early as possible, because then we can kind of get more to the personal side of things. I think it's when like the negative attitude is more natural to come out.
Yes. So you're going to see their true colors. I have a good.
Before you hire them,
What's that?
hopefully you see those true colors before.
Yes, yeah. I have a good friend that works for a big consulting company, and they will interview people, love them, but the deal is they go out dinner and drinks, and if they don't pass the dinner and drinks test, because they live on the road together, they don't make the cut. Who else? One more. Yes?
We incorporate a lot of experiential learning in our orientation where they're not being taught just that they're actually experiencing things from resident perspectives, from other peer and staff perspectives.
Love that. I have some resources, too, I can share with you from residents' perspective. That's great for training perspective. Great. It's another thing we very often hear in focus group from people. It's great to have computer training. It gets things done. They miss the interaction and having a conversation with somebody and talking about the learning that they're doing. Wonderful. Thanks for those. And if you have anything afterwards, even you want to add, just let me know and add. We can add to that list, and we can send that out to everybody then. So I love this quote. The culture of any organization is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. The culture of any organization, including yours, is shaped by the worst behavior the leader is willing to tolerate. I tolerated a good nurse. That was helping to shape my culture. What is shaping yours? Is it hiring people we shouldn't be hiring because we're desperate? Is it hanging on to people too long that we know we can't? We've tried to help and coach and mentor and are bringing the rest down. Think about that quote when you're dealing sometimes with this feeling of ruthless versus relentless in the pursuit of greatness. So either way, it doesn't matter, nature or nurture, whatever created those disengaged employees, it's having an impact on your bottom line. So I want to share with you just quickly when I go through some of these statistics about employee engagement and how the data and how it impacts organizations. Organizations with very high employee engagement numbers, so in the top quarter compared to the lower quarter of employee engagement, they have double the customer loyalty than organizations in the lower quarter of employee engagement. So these are organizations that are experiencing people referring people to them. They're coming back time and time again, double the customer loyalty in higher employee engaged organizations. Low turnover organizations, which is considered less than 40% turnover. By the way, our field, the average is 40%, which is pretty sad because people sometimes, I hear this all the time actually, oh, our turnover's not bad, it's about 40%. I was talking to somebody once that had 10,000 employees, and he said it wasn't bad, it's about 40%. And I'm thinking, you're losing 4,000 people a year. You have to replace and train and spend all that time, 4,000 people a year, and that's not bad. And then the impact that has on the customer experience. So highly engaged organizations compared to low engaged organizations, those that have low turnover organizations, less than 40% to begin with, they can reduce their turnover by 59%. Reduce their turnover by 59%. What would you do to reduce your turnover by 59%? If you have high turnover, if you've got a lot of turnover in your organization, higher than 40%, 50%, 60%, 75%, some people are dealing with 90% turnover, you can lower your turnover, once again, going from the lower to the higher level of engagement, top quarter of engagement, you can lower that 24%. Absenteeism goes down 40% in highly engaged organizations. 40%, so 40% times less time that people are spending trying to refill positions, 40% less probably overtime filling those, 40% time maybe less agency to use those, and 40% of the time less that we're annoying our customers because they have someone caring for them that probably doesn't know them as well as that person who's out sick. Productivity goes up 17%, right? The impact that has on the customer experience and customer service, right? And our reputation, of course, in the end, right? We're more productive, we're answering call lights faster, more things are happening in the dining room when we're serving people, we're getting more done quickly. Profitability increases 21%. That's the difference. Millions of organizations, bottom quarter of employee engagement to top quarter of employee engagement, 21% difference in profitability. Imagine having a difference of your profitability increasing 21%. And finally, and I don't want to say least, certainly it's not least, last not least, is in the next 10 years, if you think our gap in our fields is bad now with trying to recruit staff, a lot of you having challenges with recruiting staff right now. I mean, I'm seeing it. I have clients that cannot even take new admissions and people can't move in because they don't have enough staff to do it. So it's only going to get worse. So we're going to need another 1.3 million people in the next 10 years. I feel like, what's his name? Who was that? $1 million. 1.3 million people in the next 10 years that we're going to need in our field. So I look at employee engagement as an easy money tree. And I say to you, plant your money tree, plant those seeds to get people engaged in their work. We talked about how to do that for the first group, the people that were by nature disengaged. And we're going to talk about how to do that now for people that by nurture, the people that we are creating. So quick story, focus group I did. Team member comes in, a nursing assistant. And she said, you know, I was taking care of this woman one day, and she needed socks. It's a pretty simple thing, right? She needs socks. And the daughter came in. So what would we expect to happen? The daughter comes in, this woman needs socks. What would we expect would happen? She would just tell her she needs socks, right? It's not so easy there, because the process there is if someone needs something, that person, the nursing assistant, has to call the social worker. And the social worker has to call the family to tell them what they need. And so the daughter left. This person didn't have the conversation about the socks, felt awful about it because she knew the woman needed it. And I look at that and I think, look at all the opportunities for customer service failure, right? That nursing assistant's busy, forgets to call the social worker. The social worker's busy. She forgets to make the phone call to the daughter. The daughter's not home and doesn't get that message. Even if she does, if you got home from visiting your mom and then somebody calls and tells you something about your mom, wouldn't you think, well, why the hell didn't you tell me while I was there? I know I would. And by the way, how do you think that nursing assistant feels, the one that couldn't have a conversation about socks? Unempowered? Do you think she's going to be the person jumping up to do something beyond her job the next time something needs to get done for her customer? I'm betting not. And so when we hear her say, that's not my job, we probably shouldn't be so surprised, right? That's policy, right? Process that's making this happen. We also have people that sometimes create this, leaders, managers, supervisors. And so this is a story from a focus group too. Another nursing assistant comes in and says, you know, we had a resident, really high risk of falls. And we could see every time she got this medication, she would get real unsteady on her feet. And so I told my nurse, when Betty gets this medication, she gets real unsteady, she's at high risk of falls, I'm worried about her, maybe we should hold the medication. That's what we love our nursing assistants to do, right? Share that, what they learned, something they discovered with the nurse. The nurse looked up, she was filling out some paperwork, looked up at the nursing assistant and said, what are you, the doctor? And so that nursing assistant said to me, I will never tell that nurse anything ever again. So was the nurse just being funny, sarcastic? Perhaps, but that was the result. I will never tell that nurse anything ever again. And I give her credit because she waited for the next nurse to come on and told her that, and they held the medication. So processes and people can help nurture Debbie Downers in our organizations. So, some antidotes to Debbie Downers. I want you to talk about that at your table that we can add to this list. How do we prevent the creation of Debbie Downers? What are some of the things we can do to create the creation of Debbie Downers in our organization? We talked about the people we're bringing in new. How about the people that are there already? What are some of the things that we can do to help avoid creating a Debbie Downer in our organization? Thoughts? Let's just open it for the big kind of audience. Communication. So tell me about communication.
Like your example about they didn't know what the marketing plan was, or you have to over-communicate.
Over-communicate, yeah. So by far, the number one, probably no surprise, thing that we hear in focus groups is poor communication. So over-communicate. Great way to do that is to ask people how they want to be communicated to. You have people that want to get text, you want people that want to get memos. We sometimes think hanging something by the time clock is enough, and then team members will tell me, and then somebody else puts something else on top of that form, and then somebody else puts something on top of that form, and then it goes, and we have no idea what's piled 6 layers under originally that you wanted us to read. And by the way, we're running in to punch in and running in to punch out. Ted.
So I think that when you encounter that nurse, or even the woman in the story that you just said, a lot of times we're all optimistic and we think we can change people. A lot of times you can't, and the key is to let them go.
Yep.
And to treat them with dignity, give them an opportunity to fix what the challenges that they've got, then to let them go, because you can't change many of these people. They may, even if it was nurture, it may be at the point where they're not changing at this company.
Yep. Yep. They might be so bitter they can't see beyond. I fortunately find that to be a small group of people that we can do it, but you're absolutely right, because that's small people, even if it's 1 or 2, it's like, I could say they're zombies. They infect the rest of folks. Thank you for that, Ted. Yes, somebody had their hands up over here. And now you dropped a bead. The priceless beads. Do not drop the beads.
One of the things that we had a challenge with was that we're a small organization, but we were, as a leadership team, we communicated. But that communication didn't then.
Yes. Yes.
So it was, we had to change the way we were communicating and say, hey, by the way, it's not your job to go communicate this to your team, which is between the lines thing, but that's a big difference.
Yeah.
Had already become downers.
And we're unwilling to do that.
Possibly as a result of the fact that we weren't communicating.
Yes. Yes. So important. So talking points sometimes help with that. Leadership team meeting and then talking points from that to take to other folks. Anyone else? One last one? Take back there.
Well, we fostered a new idea that is the, when do you terminate someone or let them go the first time you thought about it? And so we call those leaner outers, because if you're in a huddle on a football team, you're all leaning in, you're all listening to the plays. Anybody who's leaning out isn't hearing the plays, not paying attention, they're not part of the team. It's time to let them have their role.
Let them have another opportunity. Yeah. And so as we think about these nurture people, though, I really want to challenge you to think that much of this, not because we're bad people, we're good people, right? I was a good person when I said she was a good nurse. I wanted to do the right thing for my residents and my team members. But a lot of this is by design from what we have created or what we've inherited in our field. And I just want you to be aware of that. That's the majority, I believe, is on this end of things like we don't communicate, and then when we fix those things, we start to see folks turn around. So just as we wrap this up, other antidotes to nurture, hold people accountable to the employee experience as you do the resident experience. So I put up with a nurse that was talking nasty to staff members. If she talked nasty to a resident, she would have been fired immediately. And we need to uphold those same standards, because that's how important the employee experience is to our residents. Yeah?
We've also found it's important to create a culture where team members hold each other accountable.
Yes. We need to hold each other accountable, right? Team members creating, so that's a culture of safety where people are holding each other accountable. So hold people accountable to the same experience as you would the resident experience.
So a big problem that we found is that middle manager is that we are not
Yes.
So we promote someone who does a really good job, but we don't teach them how to manage.
No doubt about it. Huge gap. So we do leadership training. We sometimes even come in and do staff training on dementia and all these things. And then we have this middle gap. And guess what? People lose their supervisor, not their jobs. We all know that, but we tend not to do a lot about that. It's absolutely true. Very good point. So making sure we're capturing those people. Ask team members what stands in the way of them doing their best work. I left on each one of your spots, you have a list of 12 statements that are most closely linked to employee engagement. Those are the 12 statements that Gallup has found through the millions of people that they talk to. These are the things that are most closely linked to employee engagement, and there's 3 questions for each one of those statements. So you, with your team members, you can share it with your leadership team to use with their teams, but there's tons of probing questions that you can talk to people about the things that actually impact employee engagement. You might be shocked by the things that you find out. They're not going to tell you everything. I'll tell you that right now. We hear things in focus groups that people will never tell their boss. That's just human nature. To tell more to a neutral outsider, but you'll get information that you can absolutely use. And then finally, minding your culture the same as you do the bottom line. You would never go months upon months, years upon years without looking at your bottom line, would you? Anyone skip looking at financials for like 5 years? No one's raising their hand. Right? Are you just scratching your face or are you raising your hand? So we would never think about doing that, but yet we do it all the time when it comes to culture and when it comes to the employee experience. We don't measure it quantitatively through surveys, and we don't measure it through focus groups or any other means of talking to people. So, minding your culture the same as you do the bottom line. Are you looking at what turnover is at certain sites? Are you looking at what the employee engagement scores are? Are we saying that's unacceptable, right? Would you let 50%, 40% of your residents walk out the door and go someplace else, but yet we're letting our team members do that? I can't tell you how many organizations don't even measure turnover. So they don't even have a baseline to start looking at these things, much less looking at it 90 days, 6 months, 1 year turnover. Voluntary versus involuntary. You need to mind your culture as much as your bottom line because it is your bottom line. It's absolutely your bottom line. Leads directly to it. Culture leads to the employee experience, leads to the customer experience, leads to census, leads to your bottom line, right? Your reputation is being formed by that. If we work backwards, we're looking at our bottom line, right? Are we looking at our census? Heck yeah, I'm guessing you're all looking at your census every day. Are you looking at your customer experience? Forget about once a day. Once a month even? How about the employee experience? Are we looking at that even once a year and considering it? I just read a stat that said even in organizations that do employee surveys, 27% of the managers admit to never looking at the data that was collected. And out of the ones that did, 52% of them said, we did nothing with it. And that's all leading to your culture. How are you looking at the culture of your organization? So I'm going to turn it over to Steve.
We got about 25 minutes left, I guess. I want to spend most of the rest of the time actually letting you guys talk to each other. The one complaint I hear when I go to conferences always is there's never enough time to learn from each other. And so I'm going to ask you to have some discussions at your tables. We'll make some lists from what we hear, probably write an article about it so we'll get to share it out, not just with this group, but more broadly. So as you look at this, it's always a challenge because we've got so little time, is that within your group, you've got so many differences. There's some of you guys who know each other very, very well. Others of you don't know each other at all. You've met for the first time. Some of you are competitors, and so there's some reluctance here. And as you're looking at, I tell them about this really cool thing I'm doing. all ships rise together with the tide, and so it becomes so important for us to share our best ideas with each other. So I would really encourage you to be as open as you possibly can dare to be. Sometimes we don't want to sound stupid with our ideas. We have these ideas or our questions, and all questions are good questions. And probably if you've got a question about something, somebody else has got that same question and it's not really that stupid. And then the third thing that I worry a lot about in this industry as I talk to people is there's kind of this belief that problems can't be fixed, that the culture is not fixable because we hire these people where we don't pay them enough money, we don't take enough care of them, we can't find enough people who care. These problems are fixable. You talked a little bit about it, is that in most cases, because most team members want to do a good job, most salespeople want to do a great job, they're worried. So I want to start with your turn. I want to spend a few minutes talking about, because we're so short of time, we're going to start with this, and we're not, we'll share a few questions, but I want to just, at your table, talk about why we're struggling with occupancy today. And then I'd like to have you share, so if you take about 3 minutes just to talk on your table why you think that we have this occupancy problem that we have. And I'd like you to go beyond too much inventory. I don't want to just, I don't think it's that simple, fortunately. So take 3 minutes. See, there's never enough time. We could probably just leave that one question on the table until the end. Let's start over here. What do you think? Why do we have this? Why are we struggling with occupancy? Denise, can you make some notes? Oh, wait, we got one back here, brave soul back here. Massive oversaturation, okay? Other thoughts? There's certainly markets, if you look at the NIC data, in my particular market, I live in Sacramento, and we have, I think, an inventory increase of about 12 or 14%, and I know there's a building right around the corner from my house that's really struggling. I think they're meeting their projections, but just barely, and not really where they want to be.
You got new innovation. People are able to use digital technology to stay home longer.
Okay, so digital and technology is making it easier to stay home. Other reasons? Money. Money is a big, big issue. One of the things I'm really excited about is that we're really starting to talk about how to solve this middle income problem for senior living. Nick has got some studies going on it. Very excited. I think we're going to see some things come out. I find myself wondering over and over again if we're going to see a mass migration of elders to other countries. There was an article someplace I saw on the internet in just last couple days where people can move to Ecuador, I think is where this particular article is about, and live like kings for $1,500 a month. That can pay for a lot of airline travel. Others? Yes? I'm sorry? Changing consumer. So how are they changing? What are you seeing? So adult children are making the decision and not the seniors, which implies they're waiting longer to go in?
That's what it implies, and then you've got more medical needs, you can see different provider.
Yep.
In your communities, and it requires different marketing expertise. And sometimes you don't always have the right.
Yeah, and you're actually going to be talking about some of that in the next day or two, right? But you should, yeah. So if that's
You are now.
Lynn's my good friend, and she's doing some amazing things with Juniper Organization. So if you don't know her, you should get acquainted.
Yes.
Anybody else?
I think that we can do a better job connecting with prospects.
A better job of connecting with prospects. I'm going to tell you a story about that in a little bit. Next question. I'm going to actually give you both of these questions at the same time. What do we know or believe we know about prospects? And which of that stuff might be wrong? Take about 4 minutes. Harry. Hey, what do we know about residents? What are maybe some of the assumptions that we have that might be wrong? Lots of conversation, so I assume there should be some feedback here. I'm staying down here so I can see your faces.
They're not all the same.
They're not all the same. That is such a great point because we do tend to see them as all the same. Huge, huge point. There's an article there itself.
One thing I would say is we assume that money is the problem sometimes instead of waiting
That is so important. I became a senior living consumer a few months ago when my mom needed senior living. And I went to an assisted living building and I was talking to the sales counselor. And just sort of as part of the conversation, I said, so what are your rates? And he went through this long detail of the base and the care, and then started asking me, well, how about this, and do you need to do this and this and this? And he finally came up with a number, way more information than I needed at that stage. But the thing that really killed me was that he immediately then started telling me about all the discounts he was going to give me. And I never asked, and in fact, money wasn't, in our particular case, my mom and her husband have plenty of money, and so, getting a discount wasn't why we were gonna make the decision. She ultimately ended up in a 6-bed board and care that's lovely, that was way more money than that. But it was just like, I got mud, I gotta throw in the wall and see if I can get. So great point.
Maybe it was the socks.
Huh?
He thought you had no money with those socks on.
It probably is. There's a story here that's not just, my wife didn't see how I dressed today. So you told me you'd get me. So anybody else? Other assumptions? I'm going to give you one, is that we assume that people under 80 won't move into senior living. And that there's no help for that. Largely that's true today, but we believe that there's no help for that. Matt, I'm really glad you're getting all those arranged, but I'm going to dump them all back in the bucket when I'm done, so I really appreciate that. Okay, I've got one more thing I want to do with you. It's now the year 2030. And we have completely perfected this artificial intelligence thing. And we've completely perfected this human-like robot thing so that we can take a robot and make it look like a human being. And you are so excited about this opportunity because you can now replace your sales team with a humanoid robot that you can program to do exactly what you want it to do to get you perfect 100% occupancy. What would you program that robot to look like, to think about, and to do? Take about 5 minutes on this one.
Answer the phone.
Answer the phone.
Okay, let's hear about your perfect cyborg robot salesperson that's going to get you to 100%, and all you have to pay for is robot maintenance. What's this robot going to look like?
We have the perfect answer.
Okay?
It's going to input all the data that we need in the CRM so that we can focus on the heart of who's prospectively moving in.
I really like that a lot, Matt.
Wasn't my idea.
Yeah, it's a great thing, and we're going to close with a couple stories where I'm going to talk about that. So that's absolutely great. What else?
I think one area is if that robot has an ability to use discovery to guide the tour.
Yeah.
Oh.
We were talking about a tour path. Forget a tour path. Who cares
Yeah, I like that a lot. Who else? Here.
I think the robot should be trained by the Disney training department.
By the Disney training department, yeah. They already do pretty good with robots, right? Yes. Yes. Very big ears and a very small mouth. Perfect. I love it. I love it.
I was
love
thinking
it.
George Clooney, but okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else? Empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah. Because you remember, you can program this thing any way you want. Lots of empathy. Humor. Yeah. 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 Perfect. Great. So I want to close with a couple of stories.
But first me. I was supposed to introduce Steve, and I didn't do it earlier, but I said now it's the perfect time, because instead of a perfect robot, I was thinking if we had the perfect blog guy, minus the socks. But for those of you who know Steve Moran, you know why I would say he's the perfect guy for the work that he does, because he's got such an incredible heart for our field. And we have been friends for how many years since our punch. But honestly, I see not only in his real life at home, but also for our field, the tremendous dedication he has for, like he said earlier, all of us rising together. And that comes first and foremost in his mind before anything that he does. So if you're readers, you probably know that. And if you're not a reader, I suggest you become one, because it really is about making our fields better together. And he's just really leading the charge for that. So,
Thank you. So I want to close with a couple stories. I told you that my mom is in abortion care. She had a stroke about a year ago, and I've got to do this real short. Normally, it takes me about 8 minutes to tell that, and I've got two stories I want to give you, so I'm going to do this in the short version. But she had a stroke about 8 months ago. She was in the hospital, and mom sort of ceased to be mom. 6 months later, her husband, who was her primary caregiver, had a heart attack. And that put the whole family into this just terrible chaos. I made a midnight trip down to my mom's house and brought her back to my house. Her husband had, fortunately, the heart attack was relatively mild, and he went to live with my brother to do the convalescence. And things were about the same. And then at this past Christmas time, mom just quit eating. And she ended up in the hospital, and she was in the hospital for 12 days, and it was so hard. And as I was doing all this caretaking, I felt like an idiot, because here I am, I'm this big senior living expert that everybody knows it all, and I sucked at it. I don't know how to say it. It's kind of crude, but I was terrible at it. And then after 12 days, the hospital done all they could do. And so she needed to go to assisted living or skilled nursing, and she'd gotten her 3-day stay for Medicare, so we thought, let's put her in skilled nursing for a few weeks and see if she can get some rehab therapy that will maybe make her stronger and bring back at least part of who mom used to be. And so I went on the internet and I searched, and I found 4 Medicare 5-star rated skilled nursing in my neighborhood. And I got in my car to go visit all 4 of them. 3 for-profits, 1 not-for-profit. And none of them were terrible. Well, actually, the not-for-profit was terrible, because I could not actually get a tour at that building. I walked in and they said, well, you have to go to another building down the street to come in and in order to find out whether we even have a room for her. And I was kind of done with that. I did call the not-for-profit. They're people I know, and they were, of course, quite embarrassed. But I made a decision. I'd gone in. They told me this great story about how they did all this rehab and how they cared and everything. And it turned out that it was more like the island of doom than it was a home. 9 days later, we pulled her out because call bells were going off for 15, 20 minutes before they'd be answered. The day we took her out, it was heartbreaking, and I was so embarrassed. We walked in at 2:30 in the afternoon. She had lots of clean clothes, but what she had on was a hospital gown with a sweater that was on inside out. And as we got ready to move her and started picking up her, she had this quilt that we'd brought from home that was sort of her special quilt, and it was covered with dried feces. And I mean, I wanted to cry because I'd done such a terrible job, and we took her and we put her into this lovely, wonderful 6-bed board and care, which is where she's at today, and they're doing a great, great job. And when I started thinking about this, I thought, man, Steve, you really blew it. But you know what? It was not my fault, because not one single salesperson that I talked to in both the assisted living when we made the board and care transition, because we talked to some assisted living, or in the skilled nurse, not one single person ever said to me, why don't you come in and let me buy you a cup of coffee, and let's talk about what your family needs and what your mom needs so she can have the best quality of life. No, they wanted to know what she ate, whether she could walk. All they could see was that I was a checkbook ready to write a big fat check for them every month. Nobody, not one single person, and it just drives me crazy. And I was really lucky that I already knew about this board and care and that they would do the right thing and that they'd have this great care. But I don't know what people in the public do when they face this problem. I'd like to be able to tell you about the best tour I ever had. It was given to me by a housekeeping supervisor at a Sunrise building. She's somebody nobody would ever hire, none of you would ever hire as a sales counselor. She didn't use good English, but she had one thing she cared. And that's really my message, is that we need to care about what's best for that prospect. And if we go into this sales thing where we're really doing unselling, and we say, let me sit down with you and figure out what's best for you. And if best for you is our community, that's great. But if best for you is Brookdale down the street because it's closer, or because the price is right, or because it's a great building, then I'm going to help you figure out how to do that. And if home health is great for you, I'm going to help you figure out how to find home health. And if you need hospice, I'm going to help you do that. And if maybe you just need somebody to come in and get your house repaired so that you can live at home a few months longer because that's what's best for you, we need to do that. And the crazy thing about it is the more we work at not selling people, the more we will sell, and our buildings will get and stay full. And there are organizations, not just buildings, there are whole organizations that are doing this. So you're probably wondering about my weird shoes, my weird socks, and I just have to tell you that story. Many years ago, I was involved in a church, and they had this youth leader that they could not stand. And they decided to fire him. And then the church board is sitting around and saying, okay, we fired him. Now, who are we going to put in place for that? And I can't quite, to this day, tell you why I put my hand up and said, I'll try it. Because I was like the most unsuccessful teenager there ever was. I was the geek. I was the one that got made fun of. I was the kid. I don't know if I can tell the story, but I will. I was a kid who was standing in a urinal one day, and somebody came and picked me up and turned me around, and it was very embarrassing when you're a teenager, right? It was really bad. And so why I did this, I don't know. I've never told that story before. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, but it actually turned out, maybe it was because I was so bad, it turned out that I was actually really, really good at this. And so every Friday night, I'd have 40 high school and junior high school kids show up at my house, and we'd eat junk food and have these profound spiritual discussions. And one Friday night they showed up, and there was something, kind of this buzz going on in the air, and I could feel this extra energy or something, and every time I'd walk into a room, it would go quiet. And I said, what's going on, guys? And nothing. And at first I was kind of worried that maybe somebody was in crisis, but it turned out that wasn't really the case, because I could see that there were smiles on their face, and I never got it out of them. The next Friday night, they come barging in my whole front door, a whole bunch of them. And the one in the lead has this what looks like a shoebox wrapped with a brown paper grocery sack. In California, you get to use those anymore, but the back then, and had string tied around it. And I look at the shoebox and I say, "What's that? It's for you. Come sit down to the table." And so they all gather around me, and I'm sitting there at the table, and they're saying, "Open it." Well, at first I'm really honored, but then I think shoeboxes can hold lots of things. And maybe this is a practical joke. And I'm going to open this up, and there's going to be a dead squirrel, or rabbits are going to come out, or something. And I said, "Is this okay?" And they said, "No, you're going to like it." I'm still not too sure. But I decided I'm going to give them a show. So I untie the string, and I very slowly take the paper off. I'm making a big production in there. "Come on, open it. And finally, I get to the point where all I've got left is the shoebox. And I turn it around facing the other way just in case there's something I don't like. And I peel it open, and sitting in the shoebox is a brand new pair of black and white Chuck Taylor tennis shoes. Just like these. No, actually that's not true. It was these shoes. And I looked up and I said, "Why?" Because it wasn't my birthday. And they said, "Because we want you to be so cool like us." And I'm sitting there, and I have sort of this laugh like you did, but I also get really teary-eyed, right? Because, I know that none of them have jobs, and this meant saving quarters and dimes and nickels and crumpled dollars and maybe stealing it from their parents, I don't know. And what they'd really done is they really were saying to me, with every being in our heart, we know how much you care about us and our lives. And I did. I poured my lives into those kids. And so that happened 20 years ago. There's still many, many of them are part of my life. They're people whose lives that I've changed. And I was kind of nothing special, right? I was just this guy who put up his hand by accident when nobody else would. And the only thing that made me special was that I cared. And so, as Denise and I talk today, we do this because we really, really care. We care about you. We care about your organizations. We desperately want that care to trickle all the way down, and we know that as you percolate that down to your sales team and your organization, that then perks back up to your residents and the residents' family, and it means the best possible last chapters of their life from wherever they're at. Thank you very much.